Welcome, race fans, to Pump the Brakes, the one, the only, the Cadillac of Formula One podcast. I am your host, the Pit Lane Patriot. The Belgian Grand Prix is in the books, and we will go over everything that happened, as well as preview the upcoming Hungarian Grand Prix. Let's get right into it. So the Belgian Grand Prix, Spa, it gave us exactly what Spa usually gives us. It gave us a little bit of speed, a little bit of chaos, a little bit of championship damage, a little bit of controversy, and one very clear message at the front of the field, that Kimi Antonelli is not waiting for the future anymore. He is the present. The Belgian Grand Prix was not a quiet Sunday. It was not one of those races where you watch the lights go out, check the order after the first lap, and say, oh, okay, I guess that's the race. No, Spa was weird. Spa did Spa things. The race turned almost immediately. The championship picture shifted almost immediately. George Russell's race was over before it could even begin. Lewis Hamilton got a penalty. Ferrari stayed alive. Red Bull finally got a little bit of oxygen. McLaren kept scoring, but McLaren didn't really feel like the main event at all. And the midfield kept throwing punches. And for Cadillac, Spa was another one of those year one weekends where the result on paper doesn't really tell the whole story, but we will get to that. So let's start at the beginning. Headline, Kimi Antonelli wins the Belgian Grand Prix. And that's a massive championship statement because after Silverstone, Antonelli needed a response. Remember, at Silverstone, he won the sprint, took pole, he looked like he had a real chance to control the weekend, and then Sunday fell apart on him. Car issue, lost points, frustration, all that. That was the first real moment where you wondered, okay, how is this kid going to respond when Formula One does what it does and randomly punches you? Well, he responded by going to Spa and winning, which is not normal. He's 19. And I know we keep saying it, but it's the truth. He's a 19-year-old driver leading the Formula One World Championship now by 50 points, which is just superstar level stuff. And Spa is important because it's not a random track where a car can hide. It's not like a little start-stop layout where you can just get a little bit of traction and some clean air and make something happen. Spa asks complete questions. It asks if you have speed and confidence. Do you have energy management and straight line efficiency? Do you trust your car through the fast stuff? Can you handle the pressure of a long lap where every mistake feels expensive? And Antonelli handled all of it. He did not just get lucky because George Russell was gone. That was unfortunate, but he still had to win the race. He still had Leclerc behind him. He still had Verstappen in the fight. And he still had Hamilton scoring. And he delivered. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this is where the championship starts to change from can Antonelli really do this to is anybody going to stop him? Because after Belgium, his lead is not like some tiny little margin anymore. Like I said, he's got a 50-point lead right now. Now, 50 points, that's huge. But at the same time, George Russell did DNF twice in races where Antonelli won. That alone is a 50-point swing. So this could still go anyway, but Antonelli's got a huge lead. And speaking of George Russell, he's another one of the big stories here. Once again, I can't believe I have to say this so many times on this podcast this season, but George Russell got screwed. Again. I don't know why they keep fucking my man George Russell, but he keeps getting screwed. In lap 1 of the Belgian Grand Prix, George Russell comes up behind Hamilton on a turn. Lewis Hamilton touches him in what they both called a racing incident, not anyone's fault. Russell spins out, completely out of the race. Lewis Hamilton continues, Russell's out. Hamilton ultimately gets a 5-second penalty, which was deserved. But again, both racers said it was just a racing incident. They both know that it wasn't meant. But again, the racing gods have screwed my man, George Russell.
And Russell and Lewis Hamilton make contact. Second in the championship, makes contact with third in the championship, and Russell is in the gravel.
Am I still backing George Russell to win this championship? Yes, I am. As I said, George Russell is 50 points behind, but that's just 2 situations of Antonelli DNFing and him winning. I mean, it's happened to him, so why couldn't it happen to Antonelli? As rough as this situation was for George Russell, you got to give George Russell some credit. After the race, he did not turn it into some huge emotional meltdown. He did not start a civil war in the media. He didn't just start blaming everybody. He basically treated it like, okay, look, this is racing. I've been through this disappointment and I've been through this before. And what that tells me is that George Russell is building a callus. That's life. Things happen and you have to build a callus and be able to get through it and continue. There's still plenty of racing left in this season and George Russell's holding his head high. And I think that he should absolutely get credit for that because he's being fucked out of a championship. So, George, I still believe in you. Plenty of racing still left. So after the Mercedes pair, Lewis Hamilton. It's a little bit of a complicated one because Lewis Hamilton finished in 4th, and from a championship perspective, that is useful. He moves ahead of Russell. He leaves Belgium scoring 2nd in the standings, and now he's our closest driver to Antonelli, which matters. But the race itself was kind of messy. So like I was talking about, that first lap contact with Russell, that was indeed Hamilton's fault. Anybody who knows racing and saw the incident knows that that was Hamilton's fault. It was a racing incident, but on the part of the Ferrari driver. He messed up, he got a first lap contact and was given a penalty for it. For Hamilton, it was a productive weekend, but it really wasn't clean. Like, productive meaning he scored, yeah. Productive meaning he moved up the standings. Productive meaning he left with points while Russell left with nothing. But he didn't do it clean. He had those penalties. He had chaos. It's still showing like Ferrari's still getting things together. And in a championship, that matters. Antonelli's not leaving much on the table right now. Like, Hamilton has to understand that you can't chase a driver like Antonelli who has a lead the way he does by having these messy races. Like, we have to come up on clean races. Useful races is a must, obviously, but they've got to start getting cleaner. At some point, Hamilton needs a strike. And then on the other side of the garage of the Ferraris, Charles Leclerc. It's a very important second place because after winning in Silverstone, Leclerc absolutely needed to prove that the Ferrari momentum was real. And he did just that. He did not win in Spa, but he backed up the Silverstone victory with a podium, one of the greatest tracks and most difficult tracks in Formula One, which matters. He's showing momentum off of a win. For Leclerc, that's huge. Because for a while this season, the Ferrari story was starting to lean heavily towards Hamilton. Hamilton in red, Hamilton winning, Hamilton in the title fight, Hamilton at Silverstone, Hamilton. But Leclerc has most certainly punched back. Won at Silverstone, Spa podium, changes the tone. Now Ferrari has two drivers who feel dangerous again. And that's exactly what they need if they want to put real pressure on Mercedes. The Constructors' Championship is still leaning Mercedes. Mercedes still have the lead. Mercedes still have the strongest two-car package over the season, but Ferrari are definitely coming. And the way Ferrari is coming is not just with one driver doing miracles, it's now both. Leclerc second, Hamilton fourth. That's a strong Sunday for Ferrari. It's not perfect. It's messy, like I said, but it's strong. And if Ferrari can keep doing that, if they can keep putting both cars near the podium, and if they can keep forcing Mercedes to be perfect, then the fight stays alive. Now, Red Bull, Verstappen finishes third at Spa, not because third place is some celebration for Verstappen. We know his standards. Red Bull standards are higher than that. But after what happened in Austria and Silverstone, Red Bull needed oxygen. Austria had the qualifying crash, Silverstone had the crash and the rear wing concern. There were concerns about the trust in the car, questions about stability, questions about whether Verstappen could really attack if he didn't even believe in the rear end of the car. And then he came to Spa, qualifies near the front, finishes on the podium, and gives Red Bull something stable to talk about. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not back to being the team to beat. Let's not get crazy. Antonelli won, Mercedes led, Ferrari outscored them. But for Verstappen on the podium at Spa reminds everyone that Red Bull are still in that top four. They're still in that conversation. And Max at Spa will always matter. Even in a difficult year, even when the car is not perfect, even when the team is searching, if Verstappen is close, he is dangerous. Now, the other Red Bull story, Isaac Hadjar. Isaac Hadjar finishing in sixth is a serious result. This is becoming more than a little cute storyline now. Hadjar has now put together some really strong weekends. He scored well at Silverstone, he scored well again at Spa, and he's giving Red Bull what they needed for years, a second car that can actually contribute. That is not small. Because Red Bull's second seat has been a pressure cooker, reputation destroyer, a weekly storyline machine. But Hadjar is not disappearing. He's not just surviving, he's scoring. And in a season where the Red Bull is not dominant, that matters even more. You cannot win everything with Max, you need your second car. And Hadjar is making himself very useful. If you're Red Bull right now, this is one of the best things you can take from Belgium. McLaren was another solid but not scary weekend. Oscar Piastri finished in fifth. Lando Norris finished seventh and took the fastest lap. That is points for both cars, so it's not any sort of a disaster. But again, McLaren is not shaping the weekend right now. They're not being like a main character story anymore. They're present, they're competitive, they're in the points, but they're not the team anyone is really afraid of. They're not controlling Sundays. And for a team with Lando Norris as the reigning world champion, that's frustrating. Now, Norris taking fastest lap shows there is pace somewhere in the package, but fastest lap from seventh is not the same as fighting for the win. It is a nice stat, it's not a championship rescue plan. Now, Piastri fifth is good, Norris seventh is okay, but McLaren need more than good and okay. They need a weekend where both cars are genuinely in the fight. Because right now, Mercedes are leading, Ferrari are rising, Red Bull are stabilizing, and McLaren are kind of stuck in the middle of the top group watching the big stories happen slightly ahead of them. It's a dangerous place to be. It's not enough to be panicked, but it's not good enough to relax. Now, in the midfield, Gabriel Bortoleto had another strong weekend. He finished 8th for Audi. He continues to have all of Audi's points on the season. Arvid Lindblad finishes 9th. Franco Colapinto finishes 10th. And every one of those points matter in a midfield battle. Bortoleto scoring for Audi, huge. Back-to-back 8th places at Silverstone and Spa gives the team something real. Audi's not where they want to be, but Bortoleto's becoming the guy who gives them a spark. Like, he's clearly showing that he's their future. For a young driver in the midfield, that's how you build a name. Then Lindblad, another points finish for Racing Bulls. This kid, like, he's definitely building something too. He's in that very strong Red Bull pipeline. He had a strong Silverstone, and now he had a strong Spa. And the Racing Bulls are right there in the midfield. They're considered the best of the rest right now outside of those top 4. And Argentinian driver Franco Colapinto may have been disappointed on Sunday by the World Cup result, but not by his own result, because finishing 10th for Alpine matters. The fight between Alpine and Racing Bulls is tight, and Audi is climbing, so each one of those points that Colapinto can sneak in is huge for them. And now at the back, Cadillac. Now for Cadillac, Spa was supposed to be about one word. It was supposed to be proof. That was the word going into the weekend. Silverstone was the reset after that Austria disaster. Both cars finished. They got the race distance. They got upgrade data. And they stopped the bleeding. Spa was supposed to be confirmation. Like, can we finish? Can the team handle, a long circuit? Can the upgrades keep alive? Can Perez and Bottas start getting closer to the back of the midfield as opposed to sitting firmly here at the back? The answer is mixed. Valtteri Bottas finished 18th. Checo Perez did have his retirement. So, no, it wasn't a clean confirmation of what we wanted. But, after Silverstone, the dream was about another big double finish, but that may have been a little too realistic. I mean, the team is still growing with a huge amount of upgrades. They have done just as much upgrading on their car as Ferrari has this season. Perez retiring hurts Cadillac because Cadillac needed the laps, especially in year one. Every race, every single race matters. Every full Sunday matters. And for Checo specifically, this is pretty frustrating because he's actually been the one who's often squeezing whatever racecraft he can out of a difficult starting position. So when Checo's in the race, you feel like maybe he can survive chaos, maybe he can steal a place, maybe he can drag the car slightly higher than it belongs. But if the car doesn't get to the end, then he can't do anything. Now, Bottas finishing 18th is not glamorous, but again, finishing matters. Bottas getting to the flag gives the team data. It gives them something to compare. It gives them a completed race file from Spa. And at this stage, that still has value. We also have to keep the standard honest. Finishing 18th while your teammate retires is not enough to call anything a good weekend. It's useful, but it's not good. And I think that's the way we should be sort of framing the Cadillac progress as of right now. It's been useful, it's progressing, but there's a lot of work to be done. So with the back-to-back going straight to Hungary, we're expecting Cadillac to move forward and have another weekend where we can at least get both cars across the grid. And speaking of Hungary, this is a back-to-back race weekend episode, so we are going to talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix.
5 red lights in Budapest, and the Hungarian Grand Prix is underway. Even reaction time, and Lando Norris has got to run P3.
So the Hungarian Grand Prix at the Hungaroring. No break between the Belgian Grand Prix and the Hungarian Grand Prix, but a big break between the Hungarian Grand Prix and the next Grand Prix. So Hungary's kind of one of those races where the track itself completely changes the conversation. Because we just came from Spa, which is long, fast, flowing, has power, energy, aero efficiency, commitment, long straights, big hills, giant corners, and big consequences. Hungary is not that. Hungary's tight, Hungary's twisty, Hungary's technical, it's hot, it's very narrow, it has rhythm, and it's a lot about qualifying and tire management. If that sounds like Monaco, it's because it's very similar to Monaco. In fact, people even call the Hungaroring Monaco without walls, which is not perfect, but it gives you the idea. This is not a track where you just blast down a giant straight, hit the boost, and cruise by someone. Overtaking is hard here. Track position matters, qualifying matters, strategy matters. And because overtaking is difficult, mistakes become more expensive. If you qualify badly, your Sunday can become miserable. If you get stuck in a DRS train, your race can disappear. If you cook the tires trying to follow someone, you might spend 30 laps staring at a rear wing with no way around. That's Hungary. It's not the biggest, fastest, most dramatic looking circuit, but it is one of those tracks that can absolutely expose a team. Because a car needs balance. You need front end, traction, tire life, mechanical grip, and you need a driver to be precise corner after corner after corner. This lap is relentless with its corners. There's barely any time to breathe. One corner flows straight into the next, into the next, into the next. And if the car's not working, the driver will feel it everywhere. So when we look at the Hungarian Grand Prix, the first big headline is simple. This is the last race before that big summer break, which matters. It's not just another round. This is a race that sends everybody into August with a feeling. Either going into the break with momentum, going into the break with question. So for the championship fight, this weekend's huge. Because Kimi Antonelli comes into Hungary with a real lead now. After winning in Belgium, Antonelli is 45 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton, 50 points ahead of George Russell. It's no longer a cute little early season gap. That's a serious championship advantage. And now the question becomes, can anybody make him uncomfortable before the break? That is headline number one. can Hamilton or Russell take a chunk out of Antonelli's lead before the summer break? Because if Antonelli wins again, or even if he finishes ahead of both Hamilton and Russell again, that changes the tone of the championship. He would go into August not just leading, but basically controlling the season. And that is dangerous for everybody else. When a driver goes into the break with that kind of lead, the whole paddock has to sit with that. The media has to sit with that. The rivals have to sit with that. The teams have to sit with that. Like, we have to catch this kid. And that's why Hungary is so important. It's the last chance before this pause to stop Antonelli from walking into the second half of the season with the championship feeling like it basically belongs to him. Now, for Antonelli himself, the weekend's about control. He doesn't need to prove he's fast. We know he's fast. He doesn't need to prove he can win big races. He just won Spa. He does not need to prove he belongs. That conversation's over. What he needs to prove now is that he can manage the championship. It's a difference. A young driver can be fast and win races, but managing a title lead means knowing when to attack, when to take second, when to survive a tricky weekend, and when to not do something desperate and let your rival make the mistakes. And Hungary very well could test that. Because if Mercedes are not perfect, if Ferrari are strong, if McLaren's upgrades work, and if Red Bull find balance, Antonelli may not have the clean air Sunday he had in Spa. He may have a fight on his hands. And that's what we all want to see, obviously. Second headline, Lewis Hamilton has a massive opportunity on this track. It's a Hamilton track. 8 Hungarian Grand Prix wins, which is ridiculous. It's not a coincidence. It's not cute. It's a place that fits him. The rhythm, the tire management, the way the corners work, the patience, those are all Hamilton's skills. And now he comes in Ferrari red, second in the championships, 45 points behind Antonelli, which is huge. Because if you're Hamilton, you need to make Hungary count. Spa was useful. He scored. He moved ahead of Russell. He became the closest driver to Antonelli in the standings. But Spa was messy. The Russell incident, the penalty, the pit lane drama, it wasn't a clean statement weekend. Hungary could be different. Hungary could end up being one of those like Hamilton tracks where he puts the kind of weekend together that says, oh, wait, don't hand Antonelli the title just yet. So Ferrari should definitely have some hope here. It's a less power-dependent track. It's more about balance, downforce, traction, tire behavior. Those are the kind of things that can inch teams like Ferrari closer to the front. Headline number 3, George Russell needs a response. And as I said in the review, I absolutely still believe in George Russell in this fight. I know Spa hurt. It was brutal. He got knocked out in lap 1. Hamilton got the penalty, but Russell got the 0. And that's the part that's so painful. You can be the one who got wronged, and the scoreboard still doesn't care. Hamilton still scored, Russell's out. And now he's 50 points behind Antonelli, which is a mountain, but Hungary is the exact kind of track where a driver can start changing the feeling. It's not Spa. It's not about being the most efficient rocket ship down the Kemmel Straight. It's a slower, tighter, more technical track. Qualifying becomes huge, race management becomes huge, keeping tires alive becomes huge, and Russell's good enough to take advantage of that. He does not need to win the championship this weekend. I mean, he can't, but he can start his comeback. That's the mission. Beat Antonelli, beat Hamilton, get on the podium. Maybe even a win. This is what George Russell needs. He needs Hungary to turn 50 points from a nightmare into a target. He wants to be going into the break like 35 points down max. He really needs to get this handled, otherwise Antonelli's going to run away with it. Headline number 4. Ferrari have to prove the momentum is real. Ferrari are on actually a pretty good run right now. Hamilton won in Spain. Leclerc won Silverstone. Leclerc finished second at Spa. Hamilton is currently second in the championship. Ferrari is still chasing Mercedes, but they're close enough now that Mercedes actually has to respect them because the constructors' gap is 73 points. Now that's still a lot, but that's not impossible at the halfway mark. Not if Ferrari can keep scoring with both cars, and not if Mercedes continue to have more one-car weekends. And especially not if Leclerc and Hamilton keep putting pressure on Antonelli and Russell the way they have. So Hungary is a very important Ferrari test because this is the kind of track where Mercedes can't hide behind their straight line speed. So Ferrari should be able to take advantage. Headline number 5, McLaren needs the upgrades to start to matter. Since their upgrades, McLaren has not had an upgrade type punch in the race yet. So they got to make this upgrade matter. McLaren are once again bringing significant upgrades to Hungary, which includes floor and aero changes, and they're testing an experimental rear wing. They're getting on board with this whole Macarena wing thing too, which definitely gets my attention. But McLaren have been in this weird zone lately where they're scoring and they're not controlling any stories. Piastri 5th at Spa, Norris 7th with fastest lap. Points, yeah, disaster, no, but McLaren does not feel dangerous right now for even, anybody to headline them. And if I'm the world champion team and the world champion driver Lando Norris, not being a headline should be pretty frustrating to you. So Hungary gives McLaren a chance. The track's not all about power. I keep saying this. One of the beauties of this track is it's not all about power. Mercedes can't just gun it down the track. This track rewards downforce. It rewards a car that can change directions and stay balanced. It rewards tire management. If McLaren's upgrade package brings real performance, Hungary is exactly the kind of place where they can re-enter the conversation. But again, as we Cadillac fans know, Upgrades are only exciting if they work. We got to know how these upgrades work, and they've got to put an actual dent into the gap between themselves and Ferrari and Mercedes. If McLaren are suddenly in the fight with Mercedes and Ferrari, then the second half of the season gets much more interesting. If they're still 5th and 7th, then the concern grows because solid points are not enough anymore. But McLaren, after a headline weekend, could definitely close their gap and go into the break actually still fighting in this championship. Headline number 6, Red Bull need to show Spa was real stability. Verstappen finishing 3rd at Spa mattered. Because after the drama of Austria and Silverstone, Red Bull needed a clean, competitive weekend. Now, Spa let Red Bull use straight line speed, efficiency, and Verstappen's commitment. Hungary is tighter. It demands balance, it demands traction, it demands a car that can live in dirty air and not destroy its tires. If the Red Bull is still nervous, then Hungary will expose that in a different way. And for Verstappen, this is about more than one result. He needs to keep rebuilding trust with that car, because if Max trusts his car, he can be a menace anywhere. If Max does not trust his car, then suddenly great drives become damage limitation. And Isaac Hadjar, who has been quietly, and honestly not even quietly, been very impressive. 5th in Silverstone, 6th at Spa, is giving Red Bull points. He's giving them a second car in the fight. Hungary's another chance for him to prove that this wasn't just a good 2-race stretch. If Hadjar's strong again, then this becomes one of those real stories of the season, that Isaac Hadjar is firmly in that Red Bull seat. Headline number 7, just like with Monaco, qualifying might decide the whole weekend. This is always true in Formula 1, but at Hungary it becomes extra true. The Hungaroring is hard to pass. The laps are tight, traffic matters, track evolution matters, clean air matters. You might spend the entire race stuck behind a car you're faster than. So Saturday could be the whole weekend. If Antonelli takes pole, he can control the race. If Hamilton takes pole, the whole championship wakes up. If Russell takes pole, comeback story starts. If Leclerc takes pole, Ferrari momentum goes nuclear. If McLaren can take pole with those upgrades, then we have a McLaren story for once. And if Verstappen puts the Red Bull on pole, then everyone gets nervous. And that's what makes Hungary fun. The race might be decided before Sunday, but the pressure of that makes qualifying even more dramatic. Every lap, every sector, every little slide, it all matters. And honestly, nobody wants to spend August thinking about having a bad qualifying lap, especially one that ended up determining the whole race. My broad Hungary preview is this. It is a pressure race. Not because it's the fastest track or the most dangerous or glamorous. It's a pressure race because it comes at exactly the right moment. Antonelli can tighten his grip on the championship. Hamilton can make it a real chase. Russell can start his comeback. Ferrari can move up. McLaren can make themselves matter. And Red Bull can show that Spa was not just one good weekend. Because overtaking is so hard, everyone's got to get their details right. This is Hungary. It's technical, it's tight, it's hot, and it's unforgiving. It's the kind of place where a championship can shift not with one giant crash or one dramatic rainstorm, but with one perfect qualifying lap, one undercut, one tire management masterclass, one driver getting stuck behind the wrong car for just too long. So as we head into the Hungarian Grand Prix, the question is not just who has the fastest car. It's who can execute, who can stay calm, who can qualify up front, who can protect their tires, and who can make the right calls. Because after Hungary, the sport pauses for a couple weeks. This podcast does not, because this podcast is every Wednesday no matter what. And whatever happens this weekend is what everybody has to live with until we come back in 4 weeks. It's the last race before the break, and that's why this race matters. Spa gave Antonelli control. Hungary gives everybody else one more chance to challenge that control before the break. And honestly, I can't wait to see who takes it. And there you have it, folks. That is your Belgian Grand Prix review and your Hungarian Grand Prix preview. Join us next week where we will review all of the events that occur at the Hungarian Grand Prix. See you then.